Hey, it's AllDayLive. Thanks for everybody watching and listening on this program. I think it's important that we do listen. It's a chance to listen to other parts of our community. Not so much the Northwest community. It's our nationwide community. It's about corruption, judicial corruption. We're going to exemplify this in the parties that have been the example of it in Ohio, in Stark County, Ohio, in a circumstance where a group of judges have taken upon themselves to do what they want. Seems like there's no oversight on judges these days. As I myself have been a victim of it and other people, I think it's time that we keep the messaging, archiving media, keeping record of this. I think it's too important that we do. In a circumstance where Jerry Blake in the Court of Common Appeals in Ohio, having been a person that's been a target of these, I don't think you would call them corrupt judges. They're just not in jail yet. And a circumstance where my grandfather was Supreme Court Chief Justice in Illinois. His grandfather, or father, excuse me, was the Chief Justice in Ohio. And all my grandfathers, myself, are descendants of James Wilson. James Wilson was co-author of the U.S. Constitution, by the way. And it doesn't seem to matter that we've tried to put things on proper basis of keeping it so that we have rights. But now Jerry Blake has brought out a fact that we're about to hear, and I'm going to have him on here at this very moment. Jerry Blake, Jerry, it's good to hear from you. And we've got the information of your court case that I'm bringing up here, and in the background, the before it's news report that you've done. This judge is your new guide, judge who wanted mom in prison for school choice, now removes all constitutional rights. Jerry, what's that mean?
Well, it means I was only 12 days short of having my trial, my day in court, with the jury trial, maximum number of jurors. This new visiting judge who took over my case roughly 2 months ago, without even appearing in court, while she was babysitting her grandchildren, is called by the court when she doesn't show up for final trial hearing. She cancels my trial, and inordinately, with a matter of just a couple of minutes, schedules for, or allows, and even promotes for the plaintiff to file for summary judgment against me. In other words, I can't win. The only one that can win that is the plaintiff, which means there's no trial, no jury. The judge rubber stamps, slams her, doesn't even have to slam her gavel, just signs off. I'm out of a house, out of everything I've ever worked for, basically my entire life.
And
so, in other words, no constitutional rights, no personal rights, no civil court, no civil procedure, not even Ohio law. Everything is not only disobeyed, but it's extremely violated to the point of a felony.
Well,
and there are actually crimes, multiple felonies against me in the proceedings by the plaintiff, and this judge and the former judge who held this case for 800 days won't even address those crimes, won't even talk about them. The plaintiff won't even respond on the docket about them.
We've got the names of two judges here. Ohio court has committed judicial fraud. Judge Patricia Cosgrove, and then there's another one before that. So it's just the first judge, the second judge, it's just a chain of corrupt judges, right? Right?
Yeah, it actually is. And basically there's a lot of cronyism. I actually put both judges' names in quotes, Judge Taryn Heath and Judge Patricia Cosgrove in quotes and together on Google. They come up, they worked the seminar together just a couple years ago. So they're friends.
Yeah. And you're just an easy target. That's what they like, right? They figure, what do they get?
Unfortunately, I'm a real estate broker with a background. I was even licensed in securities 25 years ago. And my experience in real estate and experience around law showed me that they were beyond violating the law. They were reinterpreting the law to not even be in effect.
Right, right. They have violated all of your rights, it appears.
I have no rights, apparently. Absolutely none.
According to them. Until...
And I've lived in Ohio for the last 56 years. I never knew there was an issue until this came about.
Yeah. We've got names of fixtures here of various people involved. Mark Don, my former counsel.
Mark Dan.
Yeah. Don't tell me
Mark Dan.
is he typical of what we call the Bar Association crime syndicate? Is he a member of it?
Well, actually, Mark Dann was the Ohio State Attorney General from about 06 to 08. He was thrown out for misappropriation of funds and all, which he was paying or overpaying friends of his, acquaintances on state payroll. There was also some, sex scandals and all sorts of strange things. It was amazing. It was almost like a circus show. But he seemed to be a very competent attorney until he refused to even return my calls after the plaintiff took a loan modification contract. It was already even on the court docket, so it was existing evidence.
Right.
They took one paragraph, changed 5 of the first 6 words, deleted 43 more words, and left ... 3 times, and it read like a sentence, directly like a sentence if you read it. And it basically said Jerry Blake gave up his rights until the end of time that anyone could foreclose on his house, including the family dog if it wanted to, without even proving they own any paper on it.
Right.
In actuality, the loan mod actually, so first-generation loan mod, I didn't give up any rights whatsoever from the day after I signed it. It was just saying I wouldn't sue the plaintiff for any events prior to that date.
Right.
And they submitted it as evidence, and the Judge, Karen Heath, overruled my motion for dismissal that Mark Dann had filed.
Right.
When that occurred, I found it, I caught it before it even hit the docket. It was sent to me from my attorney before it actually was registered because they had to have permission to file a supplementary brief. I caught it, presented it to Mark, and called him 8 times, and then I emailed him 8 times and called him 2 more times, and even emailed his partner. They wouldn't take my calls or emails or respond to anything until 2 months later when the judge overruled my motion for dismissal.
Really?
This case should have been over in June of 2012.
Right. Interesting.
The filing itself was actually illegal. They didn't even have standing to file this foreclosure. They actually created the foreclosure attorney, Charles V. Gossier from John D. Klunk and Company, the primary on for the plaintiff for their counsel. He actually created a fake loan, or not a loan assignment, a assignment of the my note mortgage to a trust that had been closed for almost 3 years. Having been licensed securities, I know that's a legal impossibility. A trust, once it's closed, especially a REMIC trust, a real estate investment trust, cannot receive anything from the day it's closed on.
Right.
So it was a fake assignment. Nobody cares about it. Judge won't address it, nothing. And according to the Schwartzwald ruling of actually Halloween of 2012, it said that a plaintiff cannot be replaced after a case starts. It basically says if they don't have standing upon the case starting, they cannot change that. And actually, in the deal with the Schwartzwald case was, and this Ohio Supreme Court ruling, was that they actually did the assignment to another bank after they had filed complaint for foreclosure. Well, they did this assignment, was recorded something like 16 days after they filed the original complaint in 2006. And then they went ahead and they had claimed that they had signed it like 8 days after they had filed it. So they can't change that. This case from 2011 is actually a continuation of the 06 case.
Right.
So they can't change that. But they're saying because I waived all my defenses, and they put that in bold print, and with that supplementary brief to overrule my motion for dismissal, they only had 1 point of evidence. They say because of that purposely altered loan modification agreement or contract, it is a contract, since they altered the contract and presented evidence, they said I waived all my defenses. So it's a unique situation, and I think this could actually be a major case to show just how far the courts will do to favor the bank, especially a bank like this that has their hands in the pocket of the county, and even the judge. The judge's husband actually basically worked for the plaintiff.
Well,
the district sales manager for a company that their trustee, their bank depository, their shareholder service, and major stockholder was Bank of New York Mellon, the plaintiff.
Oh, yeah. Well, you'll find that most of the board of directors of the major organized crime corporations is the only way I can refer to it. Most of them are judges also. How's that work?
It's amazing. I would have never believed this. I was like a horse with blinders on until this all hit the fan here in the last year and a half since I caught that fraud on the docket.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I've heard some pretty amazing things about it. As far as where you're at right now, give us an update. This has been on 3 years, right?
This has gone on right now about 830 or 840 days straight. Well over 1,000 days, including the 06 proceedings. There was 228 days with another judge, Sarah Leoli, who now is the Northern District Court judge. Who, if I appeal, and this is the Stark County Court of Common Pleas, if I appeal, guess where I end up going? I end up dealing with, a district court.
Yeah.
So it's an amazing circle. In fact, this Judge Cosgrove, when she went ahead and twisted this to file a summary judgment against me, she says, well, whoever loses can file an appeal. And well, there's only one person that can lose with a summary judgment. That's the defendant. Summary judgment is not a motion that a defendant files. Only a plaintiff does. And if I win that, in other words, she doesn't approve it, I don't win anything. Then you just go on and file another motion, which the motion dates were up back, I believe it was something like December 5th was the last date that any motions could be filed. So what the judge did as a technicality was just cancel the trial. Oh, now, okay, plaintiff, what any motions you want to file? So this was set up, I almost guarantee you, I'd almost bet my life that this Judge Cosgrove and the two law firms, there's now two law firms, 10 attorneys that are actually representing the bank, were in contact with this judge prior to that date. Because in 2 months, I never heard one word from her, not one word on the docket. And amazingly, she doesn't even bother to show up for final trial hearing. She's, babysitting at home. I can hear the kids crying in the background.
Just kind of make it up as you go along.
Inadvertently, and it's not just respectfully for a legal system, but this situation, I would call her the babysitter judge, because she'd rather be babysitting than actually being in court while she's called upon to do her duty. Interesting.
And in the meantime, it's like they can just feel like they're like royalty. They can just do what they want, right? Like,
oh, yes. Yeah. So this same judge, if you look up this name, Kelly, with Kelley, Williams Bowler, Bollar. If you look up Kelly Williams Bowler, you'll see where this same judge in 2011 tried to put that woman in prison for 5 years for registering under a school where her father lived, which she lived at part-time.
Right.
And she was trying to protect her teenage daughters because they had some incidents, people breaking into her apartment, different issues, I'm sure issues at school. And she was in the Akron school systems, which, trust me, is not the safest school system for anyone. My own mother refused to take a job there back in the mid-'70s because the person who was trying to get her in, her former principal, was telling her about, teachers being stabbed. I can only imagine what they did to students. So, and now in 2014, or well, it was probably 2011, and how bad was it then? So she was trying to protect her daughters and trying to do it as well as she could. She just couldn't afford to, move, to her and live with her father apparently. And she was working like an assistant position within the Akron schools at the time.
Right.
But the judge actually said she was planning on making her an example to anybody else who would consider doing this. That's why the heavy sentence. But the governor, the state of Ohio Governor John Kasich, actually interceded on her behalf because there was an extreme outrage that they were going to railroad Kelly into prison for doing something any good parent would want to do to protect their kids.
Right. So it's a whole series of different types of corruption, not just your case.
Right. And this judge is involved with a grand jury down in Zanesville in a major case down there. I don't want to intercede in that. I don't want to interfere with any kind of thing that's going on right now. But she's been involved in a lot of serious cases over the years. And I wonder, is she addressing them the same way she is mine? Because when she's, in my case, she is absolutely breaking the law hands down. Again, I would bet my life this judge is breaking the law. She's crossed the line many times over, and it was actually a conspiracy to defraud me of my home, and then some. If I lost my home, it would be a lot more. And according to Mark Gannon, I believe him, I even researched this, for what was done and all the breaks in the title of my property, nobody could ever legally foreclose on my property.
Yeah. So
apparently with the legal option off the table, they chose the illegal option because they're, of course, representing the bank.
Right. So in the circumstance, this is a whole chain of circumstances. No one's actually outlined the fraud that they're committing in other courts and jurisdictions, and it seems like they just came to be moving them around to create more chaos for the people that are being targeted, like you. Right?
Well, I'd sent over to you, and it's on. If you pull up homeowner of record on the website beforeitsnews.com, or if you just put babysitter judge in quotes and put it on Google, first article will come right up. If you look on there's actually a ledger of all the felonies committed within this proceeding. There's about 8 felonies, maybe 9, including one is actually a mail fraud, and another violation. They're both federal crimes. This qualifies under RICO. The racketeering laws that were designed from 1970 to, for organized crime. This is one of the highest crimes you can commit there is. In fact, this actually is fraud upon the court. Fraud upon the court, if you just put it in Wikipedia, Wikipedia just put in statute of limitations. There's a whole paragraph on fraud upon the court. It's actually the worst case, the worst thing that you can do in any court in the United States, period. If somebody, say in California, took a machine gun and went into a courtroom and killed everybody there, the judge, the witnesses, the plaintiffs, the attorneys, the sheriffs, everybody there, that's a lesser crime than this is, because as you'll read when you look that up on Wikipedia, fraud upon the court tears upon the fabric of the public trust, the public's trust in our legal system. My case alone, and I really wish it wasn't, I wish it wasn't on, and I certainly wish if I was involved in this and it wasn't as big a deal, but my case is not the tip of the iceberg. It is the iceberg that shows how far the courts will go to totally ignore and violate the law and violate citizens. And if you open up, in our local little paper, the Canton Repository, quite often you will see anywhere from between 8 to 12 solid pages of sheriff sales. And how many of those sheriff sales are done? And this is after they've gone through proceedings and the court has taken their homes.
Right.
And they're going to sheriff's sale. They're going to be auctioned off on the courthouse steps. These people have had their homes taken. How many of them were Bank of New York Mellon cases that had this absolutely extreme conflicts of interest with the Stark County Court of Common Pleas, Stark County itself? In this case, with this judge, her husband even basically works for the plaintiff. So we're talking about a massive fraud. We're talking about, just in Stark County alone, probably a few $100 million worth of homes that have been taken illegally because they did them without even acknowledging there were conflicts of interest. And this is going on across the country, because how many of these counties sell municipal bonds to the big banks that they're doing foreclosure for? So you can't tell me there's not conflicts of interest there, especially when they're not disclosed.
I helped start a TV series out here with Janet Reiner. She's the founder of MERS, which is a mortgage investigative research services here in the Northwest, MERSnow.com. Janet Reiner, she's done a series of shows, and she's worked with several of the key people who have been trying to bring the whistle out on this incredible fraud that's going to deal with the foreclosure of over 100 million properties. And people's mortgages are already paid for, and yet they still are just, it's thugs. We're dealing with, thugs, the crime syndicate. That's why I'm doing these programs every week with Stu Webb of veteranstoday.com, actually, which they're going after these trillionaires. They're not billionaires, they're trillionaires, and trying to do something about it. More can you do? In the circumstance, though, but let's get back to you. What is it that we can do as far as report? What do you think the 4 key topics need to be known to our viewers? What do you think?
The 4 key
4 or 5. What would be the key things you want people to know about, so that they maybe what this corruption is doing, we can do something about it? Those that are watching.
Wow, that's a big question to answer. I guess the bottom line is take a look at my case. In fact, for any kind of reporting agency whatsoever, and I may make additional considerations, I will send out portions of the court docket to verify. I'm even willing to sign an affidavit of truth for a news agency, whether it's a major one or not. And true, I'm a real estate broker. I'm licensed in the state of Ohio, and I'm involved in this not as a real estate broker. I'm making this public as an individual. I'm being sued as an individual. I'm doing this on my own personal behalf. It has nothing to do with my business or what I do for a living. other than the fact my background gave me the knowledge to see the crimes that we're committing. But the bottom line is take a look at my case, because it is the prime example. Like I said, it's not the tip of the iceberg. It is the iceberg, because it will show just how far a court of law will go and multiple judges will go in order to deprive you of not only your rights, your home, your finances. Oh, and in my case, too. I have a house that at one point I borrowed $125,000 to purchase. I may have had a little bit more equity that I borrowed out of, but in all, I may have $150,000, $160,000 or so I borrowed at one point, which I've made $100,000 in payments. I also put $35,000 of my own money up front to make the purchase of my house originally in 2001. And they say I owe them $300,000 plus on this house. So what they'll do is they'll try to go for a default judgment, take this thing to sheriff's sale. The bank itself will almost always, or at least try to purchase these homes at sheriff's sale. And the reason they do that, from my research, is they do that so they can close the loop. Because what they have done is they have sold these mortgages multiple times in packages to investor groups. And some of these loan packages are a couple $1 billion. And what they're doing is they're repackaging. Just say, for instance, there are 100,000 different home loans in one package. Well, they'll shuffle it up and mix it up and put it into a couple other different ones. I've heard of as many as 10 different times they've sold your mortgage as part of different packages. They use MERS to hide that paper trail. That's the only reason for MERS. It's not about trying to get around recording costs, which are only a few dollars for them to do a filing. I mean, what is it, $3, $4, $5 a piece to do a filing? This is about hiding a paper trail so they can sell it multiple times to investors around the world, not just in the U.S. International investors, they've sold a lot of this as junk to China without even telling them.
Oh, yeah, the junk bonds.
And this is no reason for war, unless, of course, they just want to come over here and take our bankers and put them off on an island out in the Pacific and leave them there. The ones that have been corrupted in larger banks that have participated in this. So there needs to be an opening. And two, this is definitely an eye-opener. It has been for me. If they look at all the crimes they committed and the documentation I'm able to present through this, they'll see there is an obvious normalcy bias to them. This is their modus operandi. This is how they operate.
Right.
And they do it on a daily basis. And I don't think I'm unique, other than the fact that I caught them when my attorney wouldn't even address it. Mark Dan was covering his own butt while his license was up for suspension, so he didn't want to make waves. He ended up with a 6-month suspension where they could have taken it for 2 years or even permanently and disbarred him. I have found, I've contacted other attorneys. They don't want to touch the case. Most of them don't want to touch the case because they are scared of it. They say it's too hot to handle. And that's because the evidence, I've purposely done filings on a docket to document everything. I filed 6 times before Judge Karen Heath was recused, and then the other 4 Stark County judges recused themselves too. It's called recusal, R-E-C-U-S-A-L. Basically, they were removed from my case. I filed 3 more times before January 15th of this year. Also, every one of these filings talking about the fraud and the felonies and documentation, even doing attachments to show what they had done on my docket and what they have done in their filings. And they've also done multiple late filings. They've made errors. They have done so many things. I mean, when I was 10 years old, I could have done better even than McGlinchey Stafford in their filings, since they've jumped in on this case since September. It's amazing. But the reason it is they're doing that, they don't care because they know the judges are bought, and especially Cosgrove. She's way over the limit. She is 100% for this, and basically I have no rights in her world. And if you look at the Kelly Williams Bowler case, what she did to that woman, or tried to do to that woman before she was reined in, is just beyond the pale. She still had 2 teenage daughters she was trying to raise. I don't know where the father was in the situation, but she was trying to protect and take care of her children, and they were just going to throw her away.
Right. And
I was watching the case at the time. She's a very bright, very beautiful woman, but she's got this personality. You can just see it in her. There's a real good there. And you know what? If what's going on in my case brings a little redemption for her, great. I will be thrilled if that happens. But there's a bigger thing going on, and that is the crimes in the court fraud within the court and fraud upon the court. Like I said, there's no statute of limitations. So if anyone is listening to this, or if they know anyone who has had their home foreclosed, even taken away from them, and they find these conflicts of interest, they find that there was any crimes done or alterations of contracts like they did in mine, and if you look at the articles on Before It's News under my pen name, homeowner of record, you will see the list of crimes, 8 or 9 felonies. If they can do that openly in court, and actually it's documented on the docket itself, what are they doing to everybody else in this country? I can't be the only one.
Oh, I know. That's amazing. No, you're not. Actually, like when they stole my home and put me out in the street, forged a document that it was a trust with my name and it had nothing to do with me. And then you find out that the entire judicial system is an organized crime syndicate, literally. And if you're not...
Well, absolutely. Right down to the gold grades on the flag, being Admiralty, trying to work under Admiral, Admiral law rather than, conventional law that everybody knows or thinks it actually exists. But, in this case, they've altered evidence and fabricated documents, but that's no problem. I mean, Mr. Blake, you have no rights. Shut up, behave. In fact, what happened, let me give you a very brief synopsis of what happened on January 15th. And two, I've had a case management and trial order that was done in August 14th on our court docket, and it stated exactly the dates that you had in order to do filings, file motions, try to seek dismissal, to even respond. Those dates were all on there. The final trial hearing was scheduled back in August for January 15th. When January 15th occurred here about a week ago, I showed up in court. It turned out that both the plaintiff's attorneys showed up. Jason A. Whitaker from John D. Cluck and Company, and he claims he's their senior counsel. He was there, and also Robert R. Turbrack, Jr., and he is one of the council members for McGlinchey Stafford, along with Rose Marie Alfiore. And they're the backup counsel. They actually represent large law firms when they get over ahead. And I'm not representing myself pro se. I'm not a licensed to practice law, but thankfully, fortunately, we are still allowed to represent ourselves, like if you're betrayed by your attorney like I was. But what happened on January 15th, I show up for court, nobody shows up. The secretary, the court secretary starts calling, and she finally tracks down this Judge Cosgrove. I don't know if it was at home, on her cell phone. Turns out they put her on speakerphone, and Judge Cosgrove is babysitting her grandchildren. I have got nothing problem with that. I'm a grandfather myself. But she was supposed to be in court. It had been scheduled. She had been on the docket as the visiting judge for 2 months. So she never contacted us to postpone or anything. So instead of showing up within 2 minutes on the phone virtually, she is canceling my trial. She'll say it was a delay, but within 2 minutes on the phone, she was saying, okay, trial's canceled, let's postpone it, we'll take care of that later. Oh, plaintiff, is there any motions you'd like to file? And that's a quote. Plaintiff, is there any motions you would like to file? She didn't say plaintiff or defendant, is there any motions you want to file? She said plaintiff, is there any motions you want to file? And without skipping one beat, Robert Turbeck pops up and says, yes, Your Honor, we'd like to file file a motion for summary dismissal.
By the way, Jerry, we've got...
Summary dismissal takes away everything.
Jerry, we've got 1 minute left. What do you want? How do they get a hold of you? You want people to get a hold of you?
They can feel free to contact me. My email is my name, and my email is on those articles on beforeitsnews.com. If you can't remember beforeitsnews.com, just Google homeowner of record or babysitter judge. You'll find my email. My phone number is even on there. I am looking for resources to not only fight this, but push back and try to bring some justice to our court system.
Got it. I appreciate that. People out there, please get a hold of him. Try to give some support. It could be your homes, not just ours. And I did mine, and now Jerry. Jerry, we'll do it. We'll get you on TV on Call for Investigation coming up, and we'll do more on this. I appreciate it, and we'll get back to you for other TV broadcasting and radio broadcasting as well. We'll get your web message out there. Is that good?
Much appreciated. I will be available at any time.
Thank you very much, Jerry Blake, Stark County Court And it's Court of Pleas, right? Or
it's Stark County Court of Common Pleas. It's like please and thank you, except without the E.
And we'll hear more about that. We got to stay up on this. So thank you for creating a story that's now nationwide. So think about that and worldwide. Thank you very much, Jerry Blake. We'll hear from you soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for watching All Day Live, everyone. Hold on to this next segment. It's going to be just as interesting. I hope that you guys can help out. Please get a hold of Jerry here at this contact information right there. And let's all help one another. Obviously, these judges are helping stuff things in their pockets. They're just corrupt and getting away with it, and nobody's stopping them. Thank you very much for watching All Day Live. We'll see you in this next segment. WillPWilson. Hey, Jerry. Hey everybody, this is Will Wilson. This is All Day Live, and we're going to have an interview with Patricia Shupe at this next half hour, and also Will Banjera, and also Brian, which I'll bring up Brian here in just a second. Brian, as I bring you guys up, and this is the All Day Live show. Good to see you guys. And Pat, you're the producer and host of Call4Investigation, and we're greatly honored to have you on today. And we're going to cover some issues which I thought would be important to cover in the time period. By the way, today is January 15, believe it or not, 2014. It's right after the holiday. And Patricia Shupe has been producing Call4Investigation for now going on 10 years. Wow. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to cover some things about what Pat thinks is important by the time it happens, that we are reporting it maybe in the future from what she sees going to happen, Pat, because I wanted to ask you a couple of things. And also,
well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate being able to be on. Producing the show with the help of Don Cron, and he's been a tremendous help. And it's going on 11 years now, Don.
Yeah.
Will, believe it or not.
Yeah, it's 11 years. Isn't that amazing, Pat?
Wow.
Yeah.
Pat, what do you think is going to happen in the future as far as a civil war where we're having right now 300,000 people are out of water in South Carolina? It's all purposely done. They said that they also have found nuclear contamination leaching into the water supply as well throughout South Carolina. This whole thing is getting a little absurd. Are they trying to force us into a civil war? I mean...
Yes, they are.
They are.
They're also going, and they're trying to go after the leaders of militia, just walking in and killing them instead. They're not arresting them or anything. Just if they can get by with it, you name it, they're trying it, and it's supposed to spark off their being able to use whatever weaponry they want against the general populace.
Yeah, I mean, it gets a little absurd after a while what we're seeing, and we're in a perspective of like being forced with our backs to the wall. FEMA Region 3. And they're also talking about, apparently I wasn't aware that Puerto Rico is in FEMA Region 3 as well. And I hope my mic has been up. But anyway, I guess I got my mic on now. But anyway, so we're in a circumstance where FEMA Region 3, that means FEMA is getting ready to marshal people off into the FEMA camps. And
that's the indication.
Yeah. Yes, and we're seeing it all happen in front of us. And as you know, all the sardines are now dead in the entire Pacific Ocean, all of them. We've got an extinction event going on. It's very serious. It gets to a point where how do we prepare for this now? I mean, or they, and here we are, I'm in the Northwest, you're down in Arkansas, and the circumstances that you're not too far from South Carolina. So, we're looking at mass water contamination occurring at this time.
Yes.
So it gets pretty scary. What do you think we should... Go ahead.
They first tried to go after owning all of the water, and we did curtail a lot of that. So now they're trying to just simply poison it one way or another, because they have every intention of a mass extermination.
Yeah. I can see that.
As the Georgia Guidestones indicate.
Yeah.
You remember them. They have every intention to kill millions, tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions, really, of people if they have a chance to do so, and they've certainly put enough different ploys in place to do so.
Yeah. So, Will, what's your perspective? What you think is built? Will's here, and we also got Brian. Will, give us a perspective on that. What do you think is going to happen? What do you think they're going to?
Well, interesting enough, I mean, this is the first time I heard of what you're talking about here.
Okay.
And the first, I mean, I automatically switch gears, you know, when I hear this type of thing, because, you know, I've put like over 8 years into the spiritual movement. And in the spiritual movement, I have met so many people that I'm astounded with, because their attitudes are so great. And like, for instance, one thing that I learned through Dr. David R. Hawkins was the fact that every thought that I make, it takes my energy. So in his map of consciousness that went from 0 to 1,000, anything below 200, which is anger, rage, revenge, jealousy, guilt, is all negative energy. At 200, which is courage, kindness, love, generosity, all the way up to 1,000 is extremely positive energy. Now, what I also learned from him was that it takes only one avatar to counter all the negative energy throughout the whole world. And Amma, the Hugging Saint, is an avatar. And I know people that have been working with Amma, the Hugging Saint, for a long time now, and their energy is extremely positive too. And what I've learned about this in switching gears is that at 200 and above, anyone that is at 200 and above in different heights or different degrees counters negative energy from other people in the world as well. So here we have an avatar, Amma, the Hugging Saint, who counters all the negativism, and all these peoples that are coming together on this spiritual movement and becoming aware of the difference between the negative energy and the positive energy are also helping by countering other negative people. So the more people that come into the spiritual movement, the more that they get at 200 and above, the more the negative energy can't survive.
Interesting. And so, Patricia, what's your thoughts on that? I mean, as far as...
Well, I couldn't thoroughly hear him, but if you take a look at, I did hear about the negative energy and so on, and if you take a look at the matrix and how it's being used at this point in time, you've got a lot of answers on the negative energy and the combating against the positive energy. If you understand that from a spiritual standpoint where we are, you'll understand why this is happening. And at this point, the demonic forces feel that they, in other words, negative energy, feel that they are totally in control, except they're not. And they're being lied to just as much as so many. If you understand it from the biblical standpoint, you've got a lot of answers. Revelation actually is playing out and telling us exactly what is going to happen, and as compared to what it has been and what currently is happening. So you've got a lot of answers, but where would you want to start?
Yeah, I can see that. And that's like exactly as far as where we're at, as far as a time period, it seems to be all too consequential. And you've been warning people for years about the Revelations. And it's all right there in front of us, exactly as they wrote it. A news report from 2,000 years ago. Amazing, isn't it? And what's your thoughts on what's going to happen with Revelations now, Pat? I mean, what do you think they're...
Well, different portions of Revelation have either already played out or currently playing out, such as Revelation 12 is just basically culminating. And then you need to also understand the several of the chapters at the same time. But as you pointed out, I've been bringing out Revelation 20, 1, 2, 3 for the longest time. And if people understood, such as Ezekiel 3, verse 5, or 35, verse 1, until it's fulfilled, we will not have peace in the Middle East. And much of what the prophecies stem from is peace in the Middle East, to be able to go to the next step. And we've got the answers for it. But right now, we've got the wrong people in charge of the right equipment, meaning that we're not taking the steps we need to take. As soon as we wake up to realize that, as it says in the Bible, we've got some definite answers, and if we just go to the Bible, we can implement those answers, such as you've got the Palestinian problem, and they need a place, a safe place, not what's happening now. If the desert, huge area, simply used desalinization equipment and pumped out, and made the desert livable, not only would the Palestinians have a place to go, the Japanese would have a place to go, and we could mitigate. You are well aware of the scalar technology, Brown's gas. There are multiple ways of mitigating this radiation problem, but we need to do it, not just talk about it or think, oh, that couldn't possibly work.
Well, pardon me just a minute, Pat. I agree with you on what you say.
Try it.
I agree with you on what you say. However, I think it's in Las Vegas. They have, over 1 trillion gallons of toxic, contaminated water that they run through a system, a plant, and when it gets through that plant, then it's drinkable water. And the other thing, I agree with the stuff that you're saying there, but I was listening to, excuse me, I was listening to this same stuff in, I think it was 1995, with Kenny Lemming, all the way up here, and I understand what you're saying. And however, what I've learned is that every time my life becomes just a little bit more positive, and every time I become just a little bit more of a loving and caring human being, it makes the whole world just a little bit better.
Which is really good input.
Yes, but if you look at this too, Will, the fact of the matter is, in depth psychology and technical game analysis, it talks about projective identification. And what I learned, when you were talking, Pat, about the Middle East, I don't think they're going to come to a peaceful agreement. I don't think they are at all, because I heard that Jesus Christ, Buddha, and the Krishna all said the same thing, that really the only sin there is ignorance. And anyone who is below 200, which is the Middle East, is ignorant. So therefore, they are going to continue to fight until they gain the conscious awareness that what we're here for is to purify our spirits, which is our energy, which is what we are.
And if through the Matrix you want to promote that, we could be doing that through radionics, etc. There's technology for that too. But is it being used? No. And as for peace in the Middle East, that is just a foregone conclusion. It's not now, obviously. That it will happen, and such as Hosea 3:5 will happen also, which in other words says that they will literally cry out and want the true foundation of Israel to come back, and in other words the covenant with the house of David. There's so much more spiritually, and I agree, you need positive energy. Spiritually, you're going to get positive energy if you are not on the demonic force. Demonic is the negative. That's automatic. So, but then, in order to accomplish this, you need to deal with the Matrix. You need to deal with Revelation 20, 1, 2, 3. You need to take certain steps, because right now,
what's your definition of Matrix, Pat?
This earth.
Pat, what's your definition of the Matrix?
Well, until we get beyond that, we're going to have a lot of negativity.
We already have that.
Go ahead, Will.
What is your definition of the Matrix, Pat?
Pat, do you have definition? Can you hear him? Definition of the Matrix?
The Matrix is an electronic control system of the entire overall patterning. You know how connected people really are. Well, the Matrix will literally connect to individuals. It's an inner and external, for that matter, too, communication, electronically or technology-wise, between the individuals on Earth. If it's geared for negativity, then it'll do that.
Go ahead, Brian. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
I understand what she's saying about the Matrix. Okay, this is something that's not human, and not being human doesn't mean that it's necessarily a bad thing to start out with. All right? But
Thank you.
It's humans that have to, decide what goes into it and what comes out. And, well, why let computers, decide this crap for us? Sorry to interrupt
I wish
there,
I
ma'am.
could hear you better.
Can you hear him, Pat?
No, it's a little bit too slurred to be able to understand what he's saying.
He mentioned about the computers controlling everything. We've allowed them to become complete control, and if we're about to have a complete crash here pretty soon, we're all going to be cold turkey with no computers.
Well, that'd be number 4 then, right, Will?
Very likely if they have any stuff.
Yeah.
Because look at the incoming, fireballs or however you want to put it. This is being done purposely, and a lot of this could be eliminated, but they're not doing so. And so they have a purpose for them allowing to come through.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what. Hey, Will.
Yeah.
Pat,
Go
what
ahead.
about? I have a friend in Colorado, and he said that somewhere in Colorado they have Russian troops that are on our land now. And I asked him, how did you get there, and did you see him? And he said no. But have you heard anything about that, Pat?
For years we've had to deal with that. Way back in, oh boy, was it 99, 2000, 2001, right in there. We literally found so many people of Russian descent in the food banks and just various locations. And they showed no respect for Americans whatsoever. And then we located where they were staying, and there were huge groups of Russian soldiers basically just being brought into certain levels of buildings, high-rise buildings. The entire floor would be blocked off. And we caught that, eliminated that. We found out they were basically emptying out the port of Seattle so that they could bring in whomever they wanted. And they outlawed wooden boats to facilitate this, so that nobody would be living right there to see what was what, or, unless it would be someone who had a fancy boat, and which would be the ones allowed to have money, etc. And Will and I are all too familiar with that, aren't we? So, in other words, they could do what they wanted to do. And they just conveniently cleared out an entire building, a repair shop that had been there for decades, which was very convenient to offload and so on. So, yes, we've been going through that for many years, and I've even seen Chinese equipment rolling down I-5. We called attention to that, too. And, yes, we do have submarines just off our coast. And, yes, we do have infiltration and other locations by tunnels on both Canadian and Mexican borders. So, yes, it's a definite problem. But
Pat,
the point is, what?
I want to mention that I posted an article. Apparently, there's disclosure of people who have been hiking out in the middle of nowhere, reporting military equipment and Sherman tanks waiting and parked waiting in remote areas. And by
we have a lot of footage of the railroads transporting huge numbers of tanks inside the nation, not going to Iraq or Afghanistan or something of that nature. And
I'm sorry, I got to interrupt. My name's Brian, and guess what? We just signed multi-billion-dollar treaties with Saudi Arabia and Israel. Okay, so these lines going down the railroad tracks with these Humvees and the tanks, I'm sorry, we're also exporting or F-35s and that, okay? They're for export, okay? If they're going to be used against us, well, guess what? I'm a jarhead, and I know everyone that works on the crap and everything, all right? They're going other places. Would you keep that in mind, please?
Yeah.
I couldn't quite understand him.
He said Brian is a Marine, former Marine, and Brian, go ahead. I turn it up so you can hear you. Go ahead, say that again.
The weapons that are being shipped right now that you see going down the rail lines, Those are being shipped to the Middle East. Most of them are being shipped to Saudi Arabia. We have treaties and that we're sending stuff that I can't tell you about. We have 35s, all these weapons. Well, they're being stockpiled in Saudi Arabia. All right, they're not all going to be held here to, used against us.
Well,
know
we've seen
a lot
not
of
only the ones going to Saudi Arabia and shipped overseas and so on, we've seen a lot right here in the USA.
Hey, Pat,
they were not
let me ask you a question.
Unfortunately.
Pat, let me ask you a question. I understand by hearing what's going on out here that we have started to do something about it. However, what else can we do about it right now as a people? Because I'm not seeing, I mean, there's a lot of people that are standing up for the nonsense that's going on in our government and whatnot, but I'm not seeing people standing up and doing stuff about what you're talking about. I mean, have you seen it, or am I missing it?
The main thing you can do as a people is to understand God's instructions of what needs to happen next. And that is that we need to literally go after the current serial killers. And this is all part of Revelation 20, carrying it out. If we go after the serial killers, it will weaken the negativity to a point that we can go after the next step, which I can give you, the guidelines of who to go after. But they are not even willing to go after the entities that are in host bodies currently being serial killer.
Well, you know what, Pat? On the computer itself, you're absolutely correct. I was checking out. I ran into serial killers somehow, and there are like lists of them with Russian names and all kinds of different names. And I'm thinking, my gosh, I mean,
why don't they arrest them?
Well,
yeah.
I mean, I'm just amazed. However, you see, if you think about this, what I said, every thought that I make, it takes my energy, and I have chosen to have positive thoughts because it helps the world in a positive way. And if all of us get on board with positive thoughts and whatnot, I feel that will counter a lot of the fear that people possess and counter the negativism today in the world.
Not going to work for me.
Is the main problem. Because if you take away those serial killer entities that are going, because one talk, two die, people are afraid. They don't want to come out with the truth. They know what the truth is. And they're afraid of losing their job. They're afraid of losing their family. They're afraid of losing their friends, et cetera, et cetera. Fear is the problem. You get rid of the serial killing, you're going to get rid of a whole lot of the fear factor. And we have to arrest them in a particular manner. But you have to listen to how to do God's will in order to do this. And most people, so far, if I talk about anything of this nature, it either goes over their head or they think it's nonsense or worse.
My name's, hey, I'm going to interrupt here. I'm sorry, Will. My name's Brian. I'm not afraid of anything. And fear, the only fear I have is that I'm going to wake up and tomorrow I'll have to deal with some of the same crap from some of the same people. I don't have fear like, you're saying. And honestly, there's enough people out here that don't and that are willing to do stuff and crap and everything. But the matter of the fact is, hey, most people, they don't want to get up and do stuff. They want to, just stay in bed, stay on their couch. They don't want to do anything.
Yeah, true. The 80-20 rule, and of that, the 20%, 80 of them percent, and so on.
By the way, we've got 4 minutes left, and real quick, Pat, what advice do you give to everybody right now at this time in history? What would you give?
The biggest thing you can do is become familiar with the Bible. read it on a constant basis, understand where the covenant with the house of David is paramount to understanding anything spiritual on this earth at this time. You get beyond that and make sure that you gather up those seven main entities. They will be in different host bodies depending on it, and you have to understand this spiritually, or you're never going to, accept this as I'm saying. But you've got 7 entities that you need to arrest properly. Do not kill them.
Well, Will, what's your opinion?
Well, Pat, thank you very much. I agree with most of the stuff you're sharing here, and I'm still very excited about being positive and sharing that positive energy, because the more people come together with the positive energy, the better things are.
Yeah.
Shalom.
Go ahead, Brian. Go ahead.
Shalom.
Okay.
Thanks,
so
Pat.
We got about 3 more minutes. Brian, one more. Excuse me, Will. What's Mr. Hawkins? What books has he written? Do you know?
Power versus Force, and he's given like a number of different seminars, and they were all sold and packed out, and they were packed and sold. And there are CDs that I possess from his seminars that I've been working with those, you see.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
What's his full name? I've heard
Dr. David R. Hawkins.
Dr. David R. Hawkins, Hawking.
I believe so. Now, he passed away a couple years ago now.
Okay. I've heard a lot about him. He's a great man.
He's fantastic, yeah.
What are the 2 books again, one more time?
No, I know of one book. He's got other ones too, but Power versus Force. I think that was one of his first ones.
Yeah. And then, Brian, one last statement to everybody.
Peace out. I want everyone to get along. It's not possible, and that's why we're created different.
Yeah.
But we can try.
Hey, I'd like to thank Pat, too.
Pat, it's a time period now where we're going to have to unite as a people spiritually, right, Bill? Like Will?
Absolutely.
I mean, this is a very important period of time. We're really seeing it happen. And Will is also a private attorney general. Will, I appreciate all your input and great wisdom.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Will.
And
thank you very much, Will.
Pat, thank you very much. I hope to have people start watching Call for Investigation, and we'll start getting people to watch your shows more. That's what's coming up next week. This is the 15th of January.
Well, we have another special guest that will be basically world-renowned. We've had more and more, thanks to Stu Webb, and we've also got the book out on the cures that the health industry does not want to admit to. And we have my book on basically writing history back into, the truth back into history.
How do they get a hold of your book? How do they get a hold of your book? Just email you?
Just contact me, and we'll be glad to get that out in CD form, or we are in the midst of making it an ebook also.
Okay. They're archived online. I am WillPWilson, and this is the All Day Live show, and I hope everyone